During my hospital checkup, the doctor asked my dad, "Are we using the same donor as the first child?" I was 12 years old and sitting on the examination table in Dr. Brennan's office when I heard those words. The paper covering crinkled under me as I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Dr. Brennan stood by the door with my father, both of them speaking in low voices they thought I couldn't hear, but the acoustics in that small room carried every word straight to where I sat. My father glanced at me quickly, then back to Dr. Brennan, and nodded once. His face had that tight expression he got when he was making business decisions, the same look he wore when he fired employees at his company. Dr. Brennan made a note on his tablet and said we'd schedule the procedure for next month, that the recipient was already prepared and waiting. My father asked about compensation, and Dr. Brennan mentioned a figure that made my father's shoulders relax. They shook hands like they'd just closed a deal. I sat there trying to understand what I'd heard, while my brain worked to make sense of the words. Donor, first child, recipient. My older brother Ethan had been the first child. He died 2 years ago at 14, in what my parents called a tragic surgical complication. Dr. Brennan turned back to me with his professional smile and said I was in excellent health for my age. He took more blood samples than usual, filling 6 vials that he labeled carefully and placed in a refrigerated case. He measured my height and weight with extra precision, recording everything in a file marked with my name and a series of numbers I didn't recognize. He examined my abdomen thoroughly, pressing on different areas and asking if anything hurt. Everything felt wrong about this appointment, different from regular checkups. When we left the office, my father was on his phone immediately, talking to someone about confirming dates and making arrangements. In the car, I asked what the doctor meant about donors, and my father's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He said I'd misheard, that Dr. Brennan was discussing organ donation awareness, a program the hospital was promoting, but his voice had that false brightness that meant he was lying, the same tone he'd used when he told me Ethan died from complications and not to ask questions about what happened. I sat in the passenger seat watching the city pass by and thought about my brother. Ethan had been healthy and strong, an athlete who ran track and played basketball. Then suddenly he'd needed surgery, something urgent that my parents wouldn't explain in detail. They'd said it was a minor procedure, routine, nothing to worry about, but Ethan never came home from that surgery. The funeral had been closed casket, and my parents told everyone that Ethan's body had been too damaged from the complications. I'd been 10 years old and drowning in grief, unable to understand why my brother was gone so suddenly. Now I was 12, and I'd heard a doctor ask my father about using the same donor as the first child. The word donor kept circling in my head. People who died could be organ donors, giving their organs to save other lives, but the way Dr. Brennan said it, with that clinical detachment and discussion of compensation, made it sound like something else entirely. We pulled into our driveway, and my father told me to go inside and start my homework. He stayed in the car on his phone, his voice rising occasionally, though I couldn't make out the words. Inside the house, my mother was cooking dinner with the television on in the background. She asked how the checkup went, and I said fine, watching her face carefully. She smiled, but her eyes were tight with anxiety. She asked if Dr. Brennan had mentioned anything special, and I said no, just that I was healthy. Her relief was visible and immediate. That evening at dinner, my parents were quieter than usual. They asked about school, and I gave bland answers, my mind still working through what I'd overheard. My father mentioned we'd need to schedule another appointment with Dr. Brennan next month, and my mother nodded, saying she'd put it on the calendar. They exchanged a look across the table that I'd seen before, a silent communication that excluded me completely. After dinner, I went to my room and opened my laptop. I searched for Dr. Brennan's name combined with organ donation and found his practice was affiliated with several hospitals and research facilities. His specialization was listed as transplant surgery and pediatric organ procurement. The words made my skin crawl. Pediatric organ procurement meant getting organs from children. I searched for Ethan's name combined with organ donation and found nothing. No articles about a teenage athlete who died tragically and donated his organs to help others. Nothing about our family or what had happened. It was as if Ethan's death had been deliberately kept quiet. I spent 3 hours going down internet rabbit holes, finding fragments of information that painted a disturbing picture. There were forums where people discussed the illegal organ trade, desperate patients willing to pay enormous sums for transplants without waiting on official donor lists. There were whistleblower accounts from medical professionals who'd witnessed organs being harvested from victims in ways that violated every ethical guideline. The stories were horrifying and hard to verify, but they made my overheard conversation with Dr. Brennan feel more sinister. That's when the story took a dark turn. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.